Hi, and welcome back to OTTB on Tap. This is episode 29. I'm Neve.
And I am Emily. Hey, Neve, what's on tap today?
Today, we're going to be talking to Kathy Goodman, who is a pressure-proof coach, which if you listen to episode 28, we talked about my experience catch riding and after the races mare in the pressure-proof clinic a few weeks ago. Kathy also has 2 OTTBs. She's retraining for the RRP Makeover this year. She's a board member for Mareworthy, and she's midway through her USDF L program. Welcome, Kathy. We're so happy to have you on the podcast.
I'm super happy to be here, you guys. This has been great, and it was great getting to meet you a couple of weeks ago at the After the Races clinic. That was super cool. So I've never actually been properly interviewed by someone that I've actually gotten the opportunity to coach. So this is awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, we thought it would just add an extra layer. Our intention had been to come and watch the clinic anyways, and then it was just so cool to actually get to ride in it because it gave me a deeper understanding of how the program works and is effective. I've been thinking about it a lot since that clinic. All right, well, just so that we can have our listeners get to know you a bit better, will you just give us kind of a brief introduction about you, your background, riding and teaching and all of that kind of stuff?
I guess the really short version is that I've been riding horses my entire life, and I've been a crazy horse girl ever since I can remember. I've been riding eventers, hunters, and jumpers pretty much that entire time. I also have some Western experience and somehow got certified to teach Western riding. If I can ever remember how to tie a cinch knot, that would be great, but I never can. So I have no idea how I earned that credential, but I did. And then as an adult and as a professional, I've had a lot of great time to study under some really awesome people like Dan Stewart, who really created the pressure proof program. And I became a peon disciple to teach it, I guess. But I love it and it's super great. And I was sort of drawn to that in his program because I really found that I loved helping riders who had confidence issues or somehow had lost their confidence somewhere along the way and really wanted to get it back. I just really like helping people through that process. And we all sort of experience that at some point in our riding. And I think I had gotten some of that out of teaching therapeutic riding at different points in my life, but it wasn't quite the same because it took some of that super fun performance aspect out of it a little bit. And with the pressure proof program, I get to combine both of those things.
So can you give us a little bit of background if we jump into the pressure proof? I know we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, but can you give us the professional background of what it is exactly, what the goal of it is, and how you really got involved in this type of teaching?
So, the how I got involved was really easy, right? I just was like, Dan, I want to get involved, right? That part was silly easy. What it is part, I think, is a little bit more complicated. Basically, it's designed to help people perform under pressure, and pressure comes in loads of forms. Pressure can come from spectators, loved ones. It can come from within. It can come from comparing ourselves to others. It can come from our horse. It can come from all kinds of avenues, right? It can even come from some of our fears that may be deep-seated that we sort of hide in the back of our brain somewhere. It's in the file cabinet, behind the closet door, behind the scary clown, behind the thing that lives under my bed, right? And I try not to think about it, but I really don't want to break my arm again. And it can come in all of those forms and more. There are tons more ways we can experience pressure, even just pressure to win, pressure to succeed, those types of things. But what it's designed to do is it's designed to help us learn how to think through that point where we go, and the wheels fall off the bus, and learn how to say, oh, right, I can do this. And I know how to do this. And I know how to do this because I know how to take that amygdala part of my brain, that lizard part of my brain that makes me freak out, that makes me turn into the man that the fox got, right? That makes me go poof like a cartoon character. And I know now how to turn that into positive energy and redirect that and say, okay, but I still have fence 5 to jump, or I still need to go down the center line and salute, or whatever it is that I need to do next.
It's interesting. A couple episodes ago, we did a recap with a woman named Marilyn, and she rode in a clinic with Lucinda Green down at the Maryland Horse Trials. And she came out for one of the earlier rides, and she saw this one jump. And it was a hanging log coming out of the water, but it wasn't actually very big. And she had jumped way bigger jumps than that. But you could just kind of tell that when she was finally asked to go jump that, she was like, oh my God, there's this like thing that she like built up in her head. And I don't know if maybe she's had trouble at jumps like that before or something like that, but it really affected the way that she was able to ride just because she had like built that up. So that kind of made me think through that when you were just talking about some of the applications and how this could be helpful for people.
That was her squirrel.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. That was her squirrel. That was that majorly distracting thing that makes you go, what? Right? Like, and it's the thing that makes you go, I can't do that. How could I possibly? I don't even know. And we make our horses. Our horses have those types of moments all the time. They see the plastic bag floating across the ring at the horse show. I mean, I had a horse that was afraid of mice, and she actually spooked in a ring at one point. I was like, the funniest part is she was a Belgian, right? The mouse was not even an eighth of the size of her hoof, right? Terrifying, completely terrifying. And I think like we have those moments too. And sometimes I embrace some of those moments by saying, my horse has those moments. I have those moments. But if we all come together and count on each other, and sometimes in front of that really scary fence, you just got to squeeze harder, close your eyes and pray a little and remember to breathe, right? If we remember to do some of those simple things, and the Pressure Proof program would definitely say, remember to breathe and count, you'll be totally fine, right? If we count our strides, we'll get to the base, we'll get to the other side. But I think sometimes it's just in the simple systems, right? I practice that all the time. Therefore, when I'm under pressure, it comes to me naturally. And one of the big things about the Pressure Proof program is saying, hey, if we practice putting ourselves under pressure, we'll practice being better at it, just like we practice riding without our stirrups. Because at some point in a horse show, we're going to take a oddly sized takeoff to a fence, and we're definitely going to lose our right stirrup at some point. But if we know how to get it back without looking and farting with it and stopping and pulling up in the middle of course, it won't throw us off, right? And so if we take that same practice makes progress mentality, then practice makes progress when we practice putting ourselves under pressure.
It's an excellent point. And I think that as riders and just as humans, we're sort of hardwired to avoid uncomfortable situations, especially if we know we have control over putting ourselves in them. Like we have control over whether or not we go to a show or a clinic or something that is going to put us under pressure, right? And I think that we're all guilty of doing this, where you get to the ring and you decide, I don't want to deal with X, whatever that thing is. For me, the other day, we had this really, really windy day. We're like 45-mile-an-hour gusts, and we got this new Liverpool for a ring. And it had folded in half and was just flapping. And I said to myself, you know, your horse isn't afraid of that as a Liverpool, but he is a very aware animal. And I was like, yeah, I'm up here by myself. I'm 10 minutes from the barn and I don't want to deal with that. Now, that probably would have been a perfect opportunity for me to put myself under pressure. But I think just innately, we just avoid it at all costs.
I mean,
no, anybody else relate to that?
I mean, totally. And the reason why, right, is that when we say we want to practice stuff, we want to be perfect at it, right? We're like, I'm practicing, I want to be perfect. And it's really hard, I think, sometimes without, you know, some of our friends or coaches' encouragement to say, I'm going to practice the hard thing in earnest to be better at it. But also, I think our sport carries this really unique sensibility about it where bodily harm and death are like eventualities, right? I mean, when I play tennis, like I don't worry that my tennis racket's going to come back and kick me in the face, right? Like, it's very unlikely, right? It's pretty safe, all things considered.
Right.
And I sometimes get a little afraid of the ball machine, but because I'm like, one's definitely going to hit me, but I'm really convinced that it's going to get me. But for all intents and purposes, our sport is really unique, right? And does have unique challenges. And acknowledging I'm 10 minutes from the barn, maybe I don't know who else is here. Maybe today's not the best day to deal with the Liverpool because maybe I don't have the appropriate amount of backup.
Yeah.
And so I think there are some real safety concerns, if you will, to put in there. But if we have good coaches, we have good pony club teammates, we have good friends, and you know, somebody with a really good glass of wine and a cell phone, and they have good 911 dialing skills, I think we can probably undertake a lot more than what sometimes we often think we can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that the Pressure Proof program is so good at, is understanding that, like, you kept referring to it as like mind bending. And I was just thinking of what would be another good word in terms of like, you're almost like overloading your brain's capability because, as you said at the end of the clinic, you're never going to be asked to do that many brain exercises while trying to ride your dressage test or remember your course or whatever. And it was just good to know that you could kind of overload yourself and still actually complete what was being asked of you at a 90% level.
Well, and I think that that's some of it, right? I think what helps give us confidence and what's super cool about doing the pressure proof stuff is people come in and they have these really wide eyes and they're like, oh my gosh, she's going to ask me to do all of these really wacky, crazy things. And they're like, I am never going to be able to do this, because in the back of my head, right, as a rider, I'm thinking, look, I struggle to count like 3 strides to every fence sometimes. How am I going to remember to count 3 strides to every fence and then like jump a few of them out of order and then go inside and outside this wacky cone, right? I'm never going to remember that. But what it sort of forces us to do is focus on all of these other things that are really meant to be very distracting. But through that, what I think a lot of riders also find is that they can ride very well, especially when they don't go, are my heels down? Are my hands okay? Are my heels down? Are my hands okay? Because we get like oddly focused on something kind of weird that we definitely know how to do at this point. And it's different if we're just starting out. But I think for a lot of us who are not, sometimes you just need that really good wake up call that's like, oh, actually, wait, I do know how to do this. And because I do know how, I can do so many really cool things that I just didn't allow myself to do because I focused so hard on my heels being down and my shoulders being back and my eyes being up that I actually looked down. Like, and it's weird, but like, that's what happens, right? We have this like massive brain fart. And then we're like, I also forgot to jump fence 1 first.
Right.
Right. And instead I give you 1,001 weird things to do. And all of a sudden, like everybody remembers their course and to count 3 strides to every jump. And the hope is you take away a few different educational pieces of information, but also that, oh, I really am capable. I wasn't sure that I was when I walked in the door, but now that I'm leaving, I'm really capable of doing this. And because I'm capable, then I can say like, oh, today, like the Liverpool example, one of my mental masks is going to be that I need to focus on this Liverpool and where my horse is in relation to it, right? And so that day, I may not focus on how well my shoulders are rolled back and how open my chest is, because it's not as important today as that other thing. And so sometimes it is just learning to pick what those focal points are as I go through things. And even if like I were an eventer, I might have different masks for all 3 phases, right? I might have 3 things that look very different for dressage than for stadium and for cross country.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something that's sort of unique to that sport, is that you are having to sort of play 3 different roles. And those 3 different tasks definitely require a different type. The fact that we can do it all in one day is pretty miraculous, because I feel like you're really stretching your brain's capabilities on any given day.
Yeah, and on the same horse.
Right. Like,
yeah, on the
right,
same horse,
like,
exactly.
And so we're stretching our horse's capability too. I mean, we can't forget that one of the biggest messages of pressure proof is horse before the course, right? And if we take care of our horse, we count our strides, we keep our hands nice and low and soft, right? A lot of things will just start to fall in place for us. But our horses are really super cool partners, especially because they don't know that the 20-meter circle was supposed to occur at this letter, right? And I think sometimes like we get really bogged down and this was supposed to happen in this order, or fences 5 and 6 were supposed to happen in that order. But honestly, if you jumped fence 5 to 7 and they were really good fences, your horse isn't any the wiser.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The horse is like, oh, I don't know, I jumped 2 good fences. He's bopping along and living his best life, right? So, you know, I encounter a lot of riders who put a lot of, and I would be in this category for sure, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well with my horse, because we know that they work hard for us, right? We know that they want to please us. We know that we've trained hard together. We know that they've stayed up long nights in the field dreaming of their chance to at the AACs. Probably not, but I'd like to think my horse does that. But
he's like, I'm going to nail that halt. We're going to jump all the jumps in the right order and leave all the rails up.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly what my horse goes to bed thinking every night.
Unlikely, but maybe.
Maybe.
Well, one of the things that I really liked that you said, I took some notes when we were having our little seminar session, was something along the lines of when someone's struggling, like say, their horse is being nappy or whatever the case might be, whatever they're struggling with. When we can't do everything that we can. And I thought that was a really great statement.
You make me sound really super wise. And that's actually something that Dan says a lot. And it's one of my favorite things that he says. And the reason why is that applies to so much of our life, right? Honestly, I can't think of a situation in life where I can't go, well, and I can't do everything I can do. But also with the horses, it's totally something to live by, because there's so many situations in which it's just not going the way we planned. Like, for whatever reason, right? Like, we had a little like slip and slide coming out of the water on cross country, and now we're feeling a little shaky heading down to that next question. Or whether it's like, oh, darn it, the judge honked her horn and now my horse is like, oh, the car, like he's never seen it before, right? But like, she honked the horn and here we go, and so things tend to not kind of go quite right all the time. But if I just sit there and think about saying, okay, but I'm going to keep doing everything I can, usually if I just focus on the things I can do, as opposed to all the things that are sort of like, woe is me, I had a slip, my horse spooked a little, oh no, did anyone see me lose my stirrup? Instead of focusing on things that I am powerless to change, dwell on the things that I can still do. Right? To me, that's the underlying message there, is really get caught up in the things you can do, because there are so many of those things. And I think so many of us, is part of the way we're taught, right? It's not necessarily my entire job as a teacher to come in and go, everything was super wonderful, right? Because like, we're not going to feel like we got a good lesson, right? Like I have nothing to improve on. I have no homework. What are you talking about? We all have stuff to improve on. But because of that, I think a lot of us get really bogged down in, oh, I have bad hands, or I have a crappy seat, or, oh, my horse really doesn't do the pee off very well. And we forget about all the really wonderful things our horse does do, or all of the ways in which we're really good riders. Because like, maybe I don't have the best hands, but maybe I have a super good eye defenses, or maybe I have just a super good way with horses, right? That I ride a really hot horse and make it not seem so hot. But okay, yeah, you're right. Like, unless I ride with my hands kind of in the neck, like I can be a little handsy. I think we all have really great things, but I think we need to kind of learn collectively as an equestrian community to tap what our individual superpowers are, and not so focused on what someone else's superpower might be, or what it even appears it might be from the outside, because often what we see on the outside isn't what's happening on the inside anyway.
Very much so. You did kind of touch on this, and I don't think you said this exactly, but it's a saying that I like to kind of remind myself of a lot, is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that we're so guilty of doing that to ourselves. And I mean, if you spend a day outside the show jump ring, or even the dressage ring, or anywhere at a horse show, and you listen to the first thing that any rider says about what just occurred, it's all just tearing themselves down. Very, like, few and far between will you have someone come out and be like, I nailed it. We're just so quick to compare ourselves to others. And like you said, just because somebody's sitting there making it look seamless doesn't mean that internally they're not fighting like a really intense struggle as well. And likewise, you might have somebody like who maybe feels pretty calm on the inside, but is incapable of getting their body to function in a way that they want it to function, I
think all of those things and so many more wild combinations definitely happen in the wild, right? But as you were talking about that, I was thinking to myself, maybe this was somehow my odd destiny to be here now and talking about positivity and in riding. But I've always sort of quipped that I think I won the coaching jackpot in horses, right? And totally by accident. But my coach as a kid always used to say to me, I'd come out of the ring, right? And he'd stand there and he'd go, what did you like? And that was the first thing he'd say. What did you like? Not what went wrong, what could you do better, right? I mean, and none of those things would be bad, but what did you like? And so I'd say something, right? And then he'd say, okay, what would you change? And I think when you get raised that way, right? And you're like, okay, I liked this thing, that was good. Okay, this I'd change.
Yeah.
But that word change is so important, right? Because it's not what did you dislike? What
did you do poorly
next time, right? Because there's going to be a next time. And there are certain instances in our lives where this is our one and only time to compete at Burley or whatever, right? And it may be kind of a once in a lifetime experience, but we're probably still going to ride again tomorrow. We're probably still going to have more opportunities to do better next time. And that's one of my big things is, especially for my students, it may not happen today, but it doesn't mean it can't happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I always joke with people, I always say, live to fight another day. But, in some ways I'm being serious, like, let's not be silly. Let's not be stupid, that we need to be safe in our sport. But also the fun side of that is, hey, there is always tomorrow. You don't have to build Rome today. And have this sport that's wonderful because we can participate in it across a lifetime. Most sports have that opportunity for adults to just continue to participate, continue to compete, continue to find different things to compete in. Like, I'm really excited that I kind of want to try working equitation. I've been doing it my life. I've never done it, but I am so excited. We're going to go. Right? And I think there's tons of opportunity for all riders in that. And I think some of it is just learning to say, hey, there is tomorrow. Yeah. Not a guarantee, but also there's no guarantee that you get it done today and it's done right anyway. So you may as well have fun while you're doing it.
Absolutely. And that's something I think as I've gotten older, for sure, I'm like, this is supposed to be fun.
You said something really good during the seminar as well. Somebody said to you, if you're not having fun, then what are you having?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to have that on a loop, just
writing all these down.
Well, because I think some of us do and even me sometimes, I get so stressed about prepping a horse for something or about getting something done or having it done on time or getting a horse trained in between lesson A and lesson B that I get anxiety ridden over something that I love, right? And that's really odd, right? In a certain way, if you take a step back and look at it and go, why am I so anxious about something that I'm passionate about? And some of it is because we're passionate about it, right? And so we want to get it, we want it now, and we want to be the best and want the best for our horses. And that's amazing. But you can also take that passion and harness it for good, not evil, and say, hey, all of that passion, give my horse all the loves and hugs and kisses in the world. And remember to tell myself, I did an okay job today. I worked hard. I did my best. And tomorrow I'll do the same thing and it'll just keep getting better.
Yeah. And I think it's a great reminder. Like you were saying, Emily, I think a little bit of it is age related as well. But when you're an adult amateur and you work really hard or you work a 9 to 5 and you squeak in visits to your horse whenever you can, that it is important to remember that you're supposed to be enjoying this. It's supposed to be fun. And whether that means you're a competitor or not, there's so many different ways for us to enjoy the experience with our horses and learn from them and continue being good horse people. So
I think that that's entirely true, right? I mean, the Pressure Proof program kind of focuses a little bit on competing, but just because it may have that competitive bent to it doesn't mean that it can't help people who want to trail ride. It doesn't mean that it can't help people who have no desire to compete, but just a desire to, in and around the barn, be able to handle things like the Liverpool that's flapping around a little bit easier. Those skills are still applicable.
Yeah. Yeah. I also feel on the flip side of that, I think it could really help a lot of competitors, even that have been competing for a very long time or are competing at the upper levels, because you do see it fairly frequently where someone forgets their dressage test, they have an error, and then they have another error. And it just kind of snowballs, and then they start blowing their flying changes. Or you're out on cross country and having to memorize not only the course you're planning on riding, but all of the alternate routes, if you're on an upper level cross country course, could be quite demanding on your brain, but you're planning on going the direct routes, right? And that's going to happen. All of a sudden you have a stop, or you find out that nobody's going the route that you're going, and you've got to reshuffle in your brain and kind of counteract that to be able to handle that pressure of, okay, now I've got to change my plan at the last minute.
Well, I think it's that art of learning to juggle and learning to balance and learning to create new priorities in our head and say, okay, that was my old priority. New priority. What's my route from 7 to 8? Forget everything else. Route from 7 to 8. And some of that does, especially for that upper level rider, it does mean that things like our hands, our hips, and our heels, that's muscle memory at this point. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about my takeoff super hard necessarily or counting my strides. I'm doing that in the back of my head and I'm barely thinking about it, right? But now that frees up some of that mental RAM, right? To be like, okay, new route because clearly this isn't going to work, right? I really sliced that approach on 6 and now I got to change some stuff, right? And that's okay. That happens and that's part of our sport. We need to be able to deal with it. And I mean, I would love the opportunity to get to work with an upper level rider, but I can say for myself that I have gotten the bell rung on me in the dressage ring. And instead of being able to go back in and just go, oh yeah, the rest of my test is this, I went back in and went, oh crap. Right. And I mean, and I kind of managed to get through it, but it was hairy, right? And it happens to all of us because I wasn't expecting my mount to just suddenly exit the arena, not only exit the arena, but knock over all of the flowers that were by the entrance. Right now
Right.
The judge is ringing the bell. I'm like, yeah, right. The judge is ringing the bell. Okay. Like, and now I'm like, I was supposed to circle it A, C, Z, no Z. And there is no Z, right?
Right.
Like your brain makes stuff up in that moment and it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like, and it robs you of your confidence. I mean, I had to call Dan Stewart after that test and say, Dan, I'm just never going to be able to ride dressage again. And he was like, well, has this ever happened before? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, do you think maybe you just had a bad day? And I was like, no. I'm like, right? No way. That doesn't happen. But it does happen to all of us, right? And he was like, well, in the future, what could we think about that would help us? And we came up with some really great stuff, right? I need to remember to breathe and not let my horse distract me that way, right? I need to just stay in the moment, as opposed to what happened in that moment was I started thinking, oh my gosh, what is everyone else thinking of me? They think I brought this unbroke horse to this horse show. They're probably right. This horse is clearly feral. Like,
right.
Like,
I have to go into witness protection now.
And I wasn't thinking about my test. And that was the problem, right? I was becoming anxious about spectators that I made up in my own head. I mean, there were people there, but I guarantee you 90% of them were not thinking about my horse running out of the ring and knocking over the flowers, unless they were spooking their horse, right? Like, they weren't thinking about that. They might have thought, oh, that's a rough day or whatever. But I think for the most part, too, something that has taken me age and experience to learn is that as equestrians, we cheer for each other. None of us want to see anyone else fall off. None of us want to see anyone get hurt. None of us want to see someone else fail so we can succeed. That doesn't make any of us feel good, right? And so I think it's just acknowledging when I see that happen to someone, I wish the best on them. I'm like, man, I hope they recover and they have a good test. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I hope
or we've all been there. Right. So I think everybody can have this solidarity of knowing that maybe you didn't make the exact same mistake, but we've all been there. We've all had off days. We've all gotten flustered. And so one of the things pieces of feedback that we've gotten about the podcast is our listeners reaching out to us and telling us how nice it is to hear other people kind of having the same types of struggles and successes with their horses. And I think that you can get very myopic in the way that you think about the people around you and everything. And I think it's just really nice to know that everyone's kind of going through it as well.
Everyone does go through it, right? I mean, they might not go through it today or tomorrow, or maybe it was 5 years ago, or maybe it's 5 years down the road, but we all go through it. Right now, my one makeover project horse, Baltimore Babe, she is currently at Foxhall Equine. She's having a very nice day, but she really did rip off a really solid portion of the medial wall of, right? Like, and that's,
oh gosh, just had a horse do that.
Right. Not only is it bad, right? I mean, it's not something you want to have happen to any horse, but you're like, man, how many weeks until the makeover? And then you like want to throw a pity party, right? You're like, wow, this horse had a really nice bow. She was like sticking to my shoulder. We were going to go into that Liberty freestyle and kill it. And now I'm like, how long is this going to take to heal, Doc? And the reality is she may or may not recover in time to do that. I mean, I'm going to cross all of my appendages and I'm going to do a lot of rain dances and a lot of burning of things, right? And I'm going to really hope for the best. But also I know that every single one of my competitors has been through this in some way, shape, or form, that we all have setbacks on those types of journeys, right? And one of my coaches, Michael, shared his with me about the Mustang makeover, and he still made it. It was a little hairy. I was doing ride whatever number it was, but it was definitely under 30 at the makeover, right?
Wow.
And like hoping for the best. And I usually like to feel for myself a little more prepared than that, but maybe I could wing it like that. And then we all just have to assess what our own comfort levels with things are too, right? Some people like to share stuff. Some people don't. Some people are more private. Some are more open. Some people are okay winging it. And some people are like, if I don't have 6 weeks prior to that competition to practice, I can't go. And that's okay. All of that's okay, right? I think that's the other piece of it, is that for some reason, equestrians think we all have to be tough as nails and we all have to get everything done no matter what. And I don't think that that's true. Why is that true, right? We can all have our own style and our own set of rainbow colors and own little mascot. Mine happens to be a chubby dancing unicorn, but hey, if yours is a super fluffy labradoodle that likes to roll on its belly, that's cool too, right? I think we all bring something super great and super unique to the table. And I think instead of going, oh, I don't match the person next to me at the horse show, maybe we just own what we are and celebrate ourselves and our own little victories, and all of a sudden things become a whole lot clearer and a whole lot easier.
Yeah. So I could probably talk to you about the pressure proof clinic for the rest of my life, but we have a lot to cover. And so we usually want to kind of segue into your dressage judge journey.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about like why you wanted to go down this path and where you are in the process and what level you'll be able to judge for and all that good stuff.
So I'm sort of in the throes of this process. So the L program is kind of a long process. I've done a bunch of like the clinics and the book work and things like that. And so now I'm really at this place where I'm doing a lot of sitting and scribing and trying to get my competitive points together, because USDF is like, hey, we have to be able to see and do. And I think that that's really important, at least to a certain level and standard, right? I mean, they're not requiring that we all score a 99. So it's reasonable. So that's kind of where I am in the process. And the reason I decided to do it is that I was an eventer for a while, and then things kind of got scary somewhere around prelim, right? I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is real. I don't know that I'm that brave. And so I kind of really took this turn into jumpers. And I was very happy there, and was happy there for a really long time. But then one of my favorite things to joke about is that us jumpers are the lowest common denominator, right? Because we don't have to be pretty like show hunters. We don't have to do 3 phases like eventers. We just have to functionally enough navigate around a course of 12 to 15-ish fences, right? And the nice fluffy footing with the sticks that fall down. And what I found as an adult and as a professional trainer is that I just really felt woefully weak for myself as a rider on the flat. And I wanted to change it. I should really know more about this. And so one of my coaches was like, you should do the L program because you're going to learn a ton. USDF is all about education, and you should become a judge. And then you have something to add to your resume, but also a way in which you've taken that, what you perceive as your biggest weakness, and have now made it into a strength. So that's, for me personally, why I decided to do it. I don't regret my decision. I have been overwhelmed a lot of the time because I am not by nature a dressage rider. But I'm learning, and it's great. And it's great to be back in that seat of, oh, wow, I don't know how to just go in there and do that. And to feel what I would assume some of my students feel some of the time, which is just total apprehension for, I am not going to remember to do the travers there. Right? Or I am so nervous that my horse is just going to leg yield right out of this arena because she used to be a jumper, right? And that's just a little speed bump, so why not? So it's been really great. It's been super rewarding, and that education really was at the core of why I decided to do it.
And what level does this entail riding up to? And then in terms also, what level will you be able to judge up to?
So most L program graduates judge predominantly schooling shows.
Okay.
To do more rated things and whatnot, I would need to keep going along my judge's journey. So I'd have to little R and my big R and my S judge, those things. I believe they can do clinics, but there is so much information I've read and so much information. And then so many times that I think I read that. And then I asked Kathy Rouse, did I read that correctly? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, that would be a different interpretation of that. Okay. It's so incredibly fun to be a student. That's one of my favorite roles. But I love to be a student, and I love to be somebody's student. And I love having great coaches who say things to me that I'm like, yeah, that was really smart. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? Okay, cool. I can remember that for my student next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the L program, it's been terrific so far. I would definitely recommend it for anyone. And it's cool because you can sign up just to audit if you don't want to fully commit. You can be an auditor at some of these clinics and get to hear some of the basic information that gets thrown out there.
And have you found that the dressage work has improved your jumping?
Oh, totally. There's no way that it hasn't. And it's made me...
Silly question.
It was a silly question. It was. Well, there are no silly or stupid questions, but 100% it hasn't. And honestly, it's made me a better rider. I'm a much more thoughtful rider. I'm a much slower rider in my head. And not that things seem to happen quick, but I was a jumper and I was an adventure-gone jumper who was a little blasé. Like, oh, I'm just going to gallop down there. I'm just going to do that. I don't know. It was a 4.5. And things like that didn't necessarily bother me. And now I'm so much more like, but it should. Like, I should have made a better decision there, or made a decision at all, or I really should have taken better care of my horse in the corner. It's just really broadened my toolbox. And there's so many wicked cool things on the flat. I mean, I have to be really honest. I was that kid who was like, ugh, dressage. Because I never had a fancy horse, right? And I never had a horse that was going to score super well in the dressage ring. So I always kind of had this weird chip on my shoulder about it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. Like, did you see that? I had to work so hard at that. And look at the nuance to the footwork and the rhythm and I'm like, wow, I'm a real dork. But like in the best possible way, right? I've embraced my full horse nerddom, I guess. I don't know. But I love it. And now I'm like, okay, so like we do the working equitation, maybe a little Western dressage. I mean, there's like a whole other world out there that totally doesn't involve jumping. I literally had no idea before 2 years ago.
Yeah. You sound a little bit like myself, actually, in that I've been a student of the sport of riding horses, not any particular discipline, my whole life. And I can never know enough. Or like last year, I rode at dressage at Devon in the amateurs division. And I left that experience being like, maybe I want to get my bronze medal. I think I do want to get my bronze medal. And that was the first time I'd ever ridden in a large dressage ring. But I was like, this just feels really nice. And then just recently I've started to train my horse to go bridleless. And everyone's like, you're always having so much fun. And I'm like, it's that little girl in me that was like, what is your life going to be like when you're in your 40s and you have not really a lot of restrictions in the way of letting you like pursue your horse dreams? And I think a lot of us stifle some of that stuff just because I'm too old or this or that, or I've always done this. And there's so much to benefit from trying new things and learning new skills.
But I think there is so much to benefit from and embracing that. Whether you want to be a dressage rider gone reiner, or you want to run barrels, or you want to get into working eq, or whatever, you just want to do starter eventing because you want to give it a go, right? I think that there are so many more options now. And I think the barriers have kind of come down a little bit. But as you were talking, I was like thinking to myself, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could just somehow coin a slogan that's like, let the horsewomen be? Sort of let your freak flag fly, right? Be who you want to be and be who you want to be today and tomorrow. And I tell my students this all the time. At a lower level, you can kind of be a jack of all trades, right? You don't necessarily have to specialize in something, right? You're not going to your training level dressage horse going to a hunter pace. Like, you're going to have a good time is what you're going to do, right? And likewise, to go to a games day isn't going to ruin your horse either. I mean, they're still going to practice bending. They're still going to have to practice yielding. They're still going to have to halt probably somewhere, right? You might go a little faster because, hey, you want to win the egg in the spoon race, right? That's the goal. But okay, so you had fun, right? You got to open up a little bit. Your horse probably had a blast too, because instead of being like, oh, now the collected canner, right? Now mom's really living. She's got an egg and a spoon in her hand, right? I mean, and it's got to be funny for them, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
What are these crazy humans doing with plungers and toilet paper and whatever else?
Well, it's like you said before, horses don't know what they can't do. They only know what they can do. You know, we get in their way, I think, a lot by limiting what we think that they can and can't do.
I think so. And, or even just worrying. I think there's so much worry. I'm going to ruin my fill in the blank course by doing whatever the other.
I'm guilty of that.
is, right? Or my trainer said, or, And sometimes like I think for the most part, trainers have like everyone's best interests at heart, right? And what they're trying to prevent is that student from being that student that wanted to take their dressage horse to the hunter pace and now they're mad that their horse kicked a shoe, or like their horse now thinks it's acceptable to hand gallop sometimes and they didn't want that, right? I think
the horror.
Educated about what quote unquote risks we're taking or what training things we might be affecting by doing something else. But I think as long as we're mindful of those things, there really isn't a big limit, I don't think. To me, it's more about being mindful than anything else, or saying, okay, this might be hard for my jumper because she hasn't spent a whole lot of time being really collected or on the bit in any way. And now I'm asking her to do this really big dressage job and she's a little confused sometimes. And so she's a little tail swishy, or like I'm going to hold the bit in my mouth and be a little spicy about it. And occasionally we like bust a move in a corner somewhere and you're like, oh, that was writing.
A little freestyle.
Right. But it happens. I think it happens to all of us. And it's just understanding that, look, I'm asking something completely different of her now. And so my expectation of her, as expectations kill relationships, just has to be fair.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Can you give us some dressage judge insiders onto maximizing your score?
Okay. So
tell us the secret.
Tell us the secrets. They're safe here. Nobody listens to this podcast anyway.
Exactly. They're totally safe secrets. What I can 100% say is that so far, all of the judges I've sat with, and myself included, really like it when people smile. Not in a fake way, but when they look like they're enjoying what they do.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we come in the ring and we look like we're ready to birth a watermelon, it's like, oh, is this going to be a good test? And sometimes you're fine, but sometimes you're just really genuinely concerned and nervous about that person because the judges want to see people do well. I don't want to watch somebody go in there and have a bad day. I want to watch somebody go in there and have a great day. Right. And I think that on the other end of being a judge, as the athlete, we're like, oh, the judge is going to mark me down. I'm not looking to mark people down. I'm looking to be like, Merry Christmas 9s for everyone. Like, right? Like that's what I do. I don't want to see somebody go in there and go, ooh, wow, that couldn't have been higher than a 3 because that hurts like my heart too. But I think one of the other big ones that's really simple and super achievable is not having distracting turnout. Right. Go for it. Be yourself, but also in a certain way, if your helmet is so shiny that every time you come down the center line, the scribe can't write and the judge is trying to see what's happening, like maybe just like
tone it down.
It's super cool in a certain way. And I'm all like, totally freak flag, do it. All the bling. I love it. Bright colors. I mean, I obviously like bright colors. My logo is hot pink, but in a different way too. I think sometimes just letting the riding speak for itself is powerful, right? Because it is kind of funny sitting in the judges box, right? I hear judges go, oh, they're very confident. And it's because of their turnout, right? It's because they have like all of the teal on and you're like, oh, this should be good. And then sometimes the riding doesn't always match that. And that turnout was really distracting to that. Or
this is me like reconsidering.
like, I mean, really,
to be fair, my dressage outfit is all gray and navy, so it's very.
I think you're okay.
I
think I'm okay.
Can go wrong in those like neutral tones. But I mean, you do see some wild custom stuff that you're like, wow, okay, and you really do. You find yourself as somebody whose job it is to just watch, really looking at it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And then for all of you ladies that have draft something crosses or Frisians or any horse with feathers, those are so hard to look at and judge fairly because the feathers give this illusion of, oh, look at all that movement.
Yeah.
Even though if you just watch the footfall, that wasn't any more impressive than the horse before, right? It was average or very good, but those feathers, man, they really make things look like just stellar. You're like, ooh, that's exciting.
So you should keep the feathers, is what you're saying. Make some fake ones to put over their hoof.
Can I ask you a controversial dressage judging question related to off the track thoroughbreds?
Oh boy, yeah, lay it on me.
Okay. Sorry to put you in the hot seat, but do you think that there is any bias of marking down off the track thoroughbreds in dressage? Do you think there's any just bias in general? Because I do hear from a lot of riders that I know that have off the track thoroughbreds will often say, this judge doesn't like thoroughbreds or something along those terms.
I think there's probably, we'll see how pressure proof I really am. I think there's probably a C answer to that question. I think for me, more honestly, especially having competed at ballroom, which is also judged, I think in any judge sport, there is inherent bias. And different judges will inherently reward different things differently. And I think that's part of it, right? And if you kind of try to take all of that style element and all of that bias element out of it, I think the sport loses something really important. And while I am sure that there are judges out there that don't score thoroughbreds as highly as warm bloods or what have you, I can honestly say that the judges I've been lucky enough to sit with so far really haven't done that. And really, like, Kathy Rouse is so funny. She roots for the little horses. Like, she loved her a honey. She's like, ooh, good. There's a potato going in. Let's see what he does. Like, and I think that's wonderful, right? But it's also really great as somebody who spent their whole life competing to, like, sit on the other side and go, wow, judges are humans too, you know, and have their own set of preferences and things like that. And I'm with Kathy Rouse. I love me a good honey too. And I get very excited about that as well. I love things that are as wide as they are tall. Oh, it's me on 4 legs. Look how majestic. I self-identify with that somehow in some sort of way. But I have not yet experienced that in a learning situation. I've certainly experienced what I felt like was that in a competitor situation. But I don't honestly know that it was. It's hard when you ride, it's hard to say what it looked like.
Yeah.
You know, those are really 2 distinctly different vantage points. And I did a lot of my riding before, like the handy dandy iPhone video. Your husband,
so there's no proof.
Right. Significant other, groom, working student can stand on the side of the ring and you can rewatch the whole thing and go, oh, they were right. I did miss it. And kind of do that thing in slow-mo for yourself afterwards. So, I mean, which I think is very helpful. Taking video is so helpful to learning. May not be helpful yet in the USDF lack of review process, but I'm sure that's coming, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll welcome that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my poor mom used to follow me around at events when I was a kid with like the big like VCR, and it'd be like shaking, and I'd be trying to rewatch my dressage test afterwards, and I'd probably be like, "Why can't you hold that more steady?" You know, my poor mom. Shout out to my mom for videoing on the VHS camcorder thing for many years.
We do sometimes get together and watch those tapes, and they're pretty good because her mom does like a running commentary, which is pretty funny.
Or she puts the cover on and then walks around for an hour, and then you get while it's playing. You know.
Yeah,
those are good too. But yeah, the running commentary is good.
Favorite videos of myself, which I'm sure my mother has buried away somewhere in an attic that I don't currently have, but I wish I did, was at pony camp. And so my best friend Logan is videoing from on the back of a pony, right? And we're like schooling some cross country jumps. And of course I fall off, right? And I hit the ground and I'm fine because we couldn't have been older than like 12 or 13, right? And I'm fine, but I'm laughing because it was funny, right? My pony literally jumps this jump, ducks right out from underneath me and takes off bucking and farting. So I'm laying on the ground laughing, but I'm laughing so hard that I'm crying. Logan rides over to me with the video camera and on video says, Miss Sue, Kathy's having a seizure. And I'm laughing so hard that like I can't respond to her.
Oh my goodness.
I'm laughing even harder because I'm like, I'm not having a seizure.
Right, but you can't.
But yeah, there are a lot of really good like homemade Blair Witch style videos of me somewhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. So shall we move on to RRP and your RRP horses? Can you tell us a little bit about, you have 1 or 2?
I have 2. Technically I have 2. I'm not sure what Baltimore Babe's competitive status will really look like giving the hoof injury. Hopefully, fingers crossed, she makes it back. And hopefully we can pull something really amazing together at the last minute. We had some really good stuff going, so hopefully it all just marinates on her and she just like comes out of this like a swan and she's like, oh, I improved it with my time off.
Yes, it does happen sometimes.
She might do that. She might surprise me. And then my other horse is Sgt Reckless USMC. And she came from after the races.
Oh, cool.
And she's super awesome. She's super 4. And she's just like really living her best life, trying to figure out how to be 4 and kind of maybe do some dressage and some liberty work. And sometimes she's super cool and super great. And you're like, this horse has got it. And then other days you're like, oh, we're still 4, right? She's like, squirrel. Oh, wait, I was cantering. I'm sorry. What? Like, and you're like, yo, okay. You're like, so I'm hopeful personally that, if we get to the dressage arena, that there aren't any squirrels, because she's extremely distracted by wildlife. So just really hoping for lack of wildlife. But otherwise she should be totally good. I mean, she's not like bad distracted. She's not mean. She's not super spooky. She's just like, I need to pause. I need to take them.
That's so funny.
And I'm not sure if that's because like she was at the track and there wasn't really wildlife. I have no idea what goes through her head.
That's really silly.
But you are not going to push her through that moment. Like, she is having a moment, and
she's being a little bit of a mare about it, perhaps.
A
where
little
you
bit of
have
a
to let her.
Has a lot of opinions.
Is this your first year going?
This is my very first year going. I don't know. Well, I know what made me crazy enough to do it. It was that Baltimore Babe came into my life, and I'm on the board at Mareworthy, and Mareworthy was like, it would be really great if we had a really great trainer, nudge, nudge, who like wanted to take a Mareworthy horse, nudge, nudge, to the makeover like you. And I was like, I don't do stuff like that. It's not me. I like to compete, but I also like not to compete. And I've been very content lately not competing in a certain way. And now that I've gotten back into it, I'm like, oh, actually, I think I might like it again. But I decided to do it because I convinced myself that it was for a good cause. And hopefully I was shedding some light on a very deserving charity. And I was shedding some light on some really great OTTBs that, given that I've spent a majority of my life growing up in Maryland, I've had plenty of in my life, and they've been amazing, right? And I think they are deserving of lots of spotlight attention. So I agreed to do it, and then 1 became 2 overnight.
Amazing.
2, and then
It happens.
3, right? So, and so yeah, I'm just like trying to kind of bump along and figure it out, and hope that I can do it on a timeline.
So I'm looking up and geeking out over your horse's pedigrees right now. So Baltimore Babe. Baltimore Babe is from Mareworthy, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. And so she is by Baltimore Bob, who's a Malibu Moon.
Nice.
And then out of a Stormy Atlantic / Holy Bull mare. So, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to like there.
There's a ton to like about a Baltimore Babe. She is quite a diva. She likes to be treated like she's a diva. She does not like to be treated like she's not one. And she is a princess. Like, she deserves to be worshipped in every sense of the word. She gets everything she wants. She travels with ice boots. I don't feel like there's a whole lot that Baltimore Babe really lacks in her life. I mean, right now she's getting definitely some really good treatment at Foxhall, and they're doing everything they can. And my farrier's been great, and he made her these like custom slippers that are awesome, and stuck them on his forge and came back 2 days later to put them on. I was like, oh my gosh, I am the most blessed rider in the whole world. Farriers don't show up, trim the feet, and then go, well, I'll trace it and I'll measure and I'll do all the things.
Right. It's amazing.
Right. Like, that's incredible. So, honestly, Babe in so many ways has shown me so many different things about myself, but has also really been this reason for my entire team to come together in this great way that I never thought was never even imagined was possible. Not in a negative way, just never would have thought I'd have both Cooper and Chris looking at a horse at the same time. And why would there be a reason for that? And she's presented all of the reasons. And why would I need custom forged shoes? Well, enter Babe. And, and it's just all of the things have been enter Babe. And, she's just this super little, very petite, unassuming bay off the track. But in this very strange way, she's been a rock star. I mean, she's learned so much liberty work in so little time. And to me, that's a huge accomplishment, because unlike the riding work, I can't sit up there and babysit her and help her and helicopter mom her. If she leaves, she just leaves.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all she wrote. And she's a thoroughbred. So when she leaves, she's gone.
Right. It's gone fast.
Right. And I don't run that fast. Remember that my spirit animal is the chubby unicorn with the tutu on. So I waddle after her very ineptly. And she's really got to be a true Velcro horse. And she has 100% been that in every sense of the word. Like, and I mean, my ankle, she was like right there. She's like, I'll just Liberty right next to you so you can like hold on to me. She's just been really great. I honestly can't imagine my barn without her in it now. And she was also this huge violation of all of my personal policies about like, I don't do kill pen animals. It's just too sad. I can't do it. It's not my deal. And of course, Mareworthy was able to rescue her from the kill pen. And
oh, wow.
That was a really great thing. But I just cannot imagine my barn without her. She's just there and ready to work and wants to get it done and like wants to get it done though. I mean, like, don't lollygag. She has things to do in her agenda. So you can't like take a back seat and like sip your margarita and work with Babe, but like very serious competitor. However, she is really stellar. So I'm seriously hoping I get to share her with everyone because I think everyone would be privileged to see her. She certainly brought a lot to my life. So.
And is she a keeper of yours, or is she going to be for sale or adoption?
No, she's definitely a keeper. Babe is
sounds like it.
Every sense. Even when she hurt her hoof, she was like, I'm going to power walk through this crap. I'm going to do it. And I was like, okay, yep, she's definitely mine. Because I do that. I get hurt and I'm like, nobody's holding me back. She's telling me I can't. I'm going to do it. And I was like, oh my God, there she goes. They're at the clinic, like, why is she not more lame? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just like.
She's thoroughbred. She sounds like every good stereotype of a thoroughbred. Hardworking, intelligent, stoic.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Stoic.
And what's the breeding on the other horse?
Looks like by Shackleford out of a mine shaft mare.
Nice.
Yeah, so two really nicely bred ones that you got.
Yeah, I mean,
Sgt Reckless.
Rex is classy in like every sense of the word. She's much more reserved. She makes a really good mare face, but that's about the only face she makes is really good mare face. And she's all talk. I loved her from the moment I met her because she makes mare face and then you go up and kiss her and she's like, oh, I like that. And so she really is just all talk. She's Babe's best pasture mate. They go everywhere together. They eat off the same blade of grass. They're most often seen with one of their two heads over the other one's back.
Oh.
They're really funny together. They're kind of like the odd couple because I wouldn't say that Babe is super athletically inclined and Rex is very athletically inclined. Babe is very like sweet and she's very non-alpha and Rex is all alpha and they make it work, right? They just like get along like two little peas in a pod. And Rex has been an absolute pleasure to work with. And actually, it was funny. And working with Rex, I had to remind myself several times that, wait, what is the real goal here? And the real goal is to produce a really nice horse, whether or not the makeover is involved in that at the end of the process. And I had to kind of take a step back and say, wait, if she were just another 4-year-old horse that I were bringing along, I'd be ecstatic about her progress. And because of that time limit, I've been like hard on myself and her. And I really had to kind of go, wait, like she's an exquisite mare and she just may need a little bit more time in the end. Right. And so I think there was an agreement amongst, me and my whole team that we're going to go at Rex's pace, whatever that may be. And if that gets us to the dressage arena at the makeover, that's amazing. But if it ultimately means that we scratch her because she's just not ready yet, that's okay too. But for me with Rex, it's definitely about just keeping her as perfect and classy as she is because she is all of those things.
So it sounds like you're aiming both of them for, well, hopefully for free Liberty and dressage.
And I have never ridden Babe. I've never, she is.
That's intriguing.
Liberty work. I've never done that before. And it's been amazing, actually. I thought I'd miss the riding. I don't.
Can you describe a little bit about the Liberty work and what you're training her to do? Because I don't think any of our other RRP people are aiming for that.
No.
So the Liberty work is super awesome. And I can't say I knew the most about it until a few years ago myself. I sort of explored it because I had recently gotten another path credential to do equine assisted learning. And I was like, oh, the Liberty work might be really complementary to that. And I started learning about it and exploring it. And then I was like, oh, this is really appealing. I really like this. This is super fun, because what it really highlights is the connection between the horse and handler. And that's one of my big things, is connection and good connection between horse and rider. And why not put that on the ground? And it's so fundamental. And then it kind of became a part of my breaking process in a weird way. You start them at liberty and then put them on lines and just teach them how to connect with you and say, oh, I'm in trouble. Ooh, where is she? Okay, let me find her. Oh, I'm in trouble. Where is she? Let me find her. Right. And I do think there's something to be said for that, in terms of like, if I've been successful in teaching a horse to come back to me when they get in trouble, even when I'm mounted, they'll find where my direction is going. And I just find it really teaches them how to kind of problem solve and learn, as opposed to, get stiff and stuck and panic, just like humans do. New situations, right? Back to that whole like pressure proof deal.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just find it's a really good tool to just teach them how to start embracing the learning process. And so the liberty work, in the most traditional sense, right, is that there's no tack whatsoever. And I take my whip or two, whatever I want to take with me, and I go out to the center of an arena somewhere, and we make some really great uniform circles with good rhythm and cadence, just like you would in dressage or any other discipline. And then I can do tricks and things like that from there. And it's fun because the sky's the limit on tricks and stuff, right? I mean, horses can do all kinds of
fun,
cool stuff. And just like humans, they all have their own like little individual quirks and talents and hidden things they're good at and whatnot. There are some standard tricks like rearing and bowing and things that a lot of and Babe's working on some of those. But I'm in love with it as a discipline, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be a purist, and I'm not going to ride Babe. And some of that decision was also made between Kyle and I at Mareworthy, because Babe is a little physically infirm from her track career, and it just wasn't clear that being able to ride her was necessarily either in her best interest or going to work out in that time frame. But for her to be sound, not under tack, and for her to be sound on her own 2 feet and be able to do that seemed like that was pretty reasonable. I think also for me and for him, kind of a way to showcase that there are lots of ways that these animals can have careers beyond the track, and not all of them involve riding. And I think that that's an important message for, like, let the horsewomen be, right? Not all of us necessarily want to ride, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We can still have horses. We can still be horsewomen. It's just that we don't ride, and instead we do this incredible liberty work. And there's still loads of connection and loads of horsemanship involved. And it's still wicked difficult, just like all the mounted stuff. And honestly, like, I didn't realize kind of how physically demanding until I hurt myself doing liberty work and not riding.
I know.
Because I footing like a dope. And, and so I think it's a really wonderful discipline, and I think not enough people quite know about it yet. And I think more people should join the Tea Party. It's fun.
This is so cool. We're learning like all sorts of new stuff today. I'm super jazzed about it. But I love it because I think and we're going to talk about Mareworthy in a minute, but I think that not only OTTBs or thoroughbreds or whatever, a lot of horses, you see these ads for them because, I can't ride it anymore. I need to find it a new home. And then, as we all know, they're involved in this industry. That's when the horse tends to start to get into trouble. Whereas maybe it's going to end up in a bad situation. Maybe it ends up in the slaughter pipeline because it's seen as not useful. So having this really cool discipline that you could do without ever having to sit on their back seems like a great kind of outlet for that.
I mean, I can personally say that it's been a great outlet for another one of my OTTBs, Start a Fire. He's not involved in the makeover at all, but he had some back problems, and I had to wait a little bit for the vet to come out and do some injections and things like that. And I didn't really want to be riding him in that time because I probably could, and he's certainly been a very good boy so far. It just sort of didn't feel fair. And my other major concern as a trainer was like, I don't want to teach him that being ridden means something hurts.
Yeah.
That's really hard to undo. And so during that time, I taught him how to do liberty work just to keep his brain going, because he otherwise was fine and completely sound. He just needed a little bit of help carrying rider weight. And, and so it became this like perfect outlet. And he's like super funny. He loves people. And he actually, I think, would maybe like to herd cows in another life, because like, you can make me go around. Maybe I can make you go around me. And I was like, oh, Jen, okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the fact that you were sort of forced to take a little bit of a break when you first got him. And like you said, you could have ridden him. And we were talking, I think it was with our episode with Alyssa Pitt, but she talked about when you first get a thoroughbred home, the worst thing you can do is just chuck them out in a field because that horse is looking for something to do every day. And so if you do nothing with them, they're like, well, maybe I'll try to run around and get myself hurt or whatever the case might be. But the introduction of brain work, thoughtful work for them, it could be just, like you said, just completely liberty work, or it could be just working with them on the ground. Mm-hmm. They really seek that out. And I think they're maybe more so than other breeds, like really just, I think their work ethic can't be denied. And they love to try to figure out a puzzle. And I think it would be nice if more people incorporated that type of work into the first couple of months of getting to know that horse. So like you said, the horse doesn't associate this new type of riding with frustration, pain, discomfort, etc.
I think that would be like amazing if more people could learn how to sort of incorporate it into whatever it is they already do. I mean, that was essentially all I did, right? I said, okay, well, I do these things, and I would ordinarily long line, and I would ordinarily lunge a horse or work out in hand on the ground before I get on them anyway. And so, it was pretty natural at that point, right, to say, well, why not like do some liberty work? I obviously have the round pen, and even if you don't, like you can do it on a lead shank, especially a longish lead shank, and sort of relinquish some control and ask them to just like walk next to you. And then when I hoe with my body, they hoe too. And when I back up, they back up. And so there are ways to incorporate it, even if you don't have a facility that is made for liberty or has a really nice round pen or a place that's small enough and enclosed enough for you to actually chase them around a little bit and do it safely. I think there are ways to incorporate it, or even some of the tricks and things like that. Because like you said, I think the brain work is really important. And I think why I think it's important is it's about learning how to learn and learn how to learn in a way that isn't terrifying. And that's not just like, escape the pressure. But learning to learn in a way that's like, where's the release of pressure? Ooh, that was nice. And learning to seek that spot and that comfort spot. I feel like now I've sort of created this small army of thoroughbreds in my barn that just walk around licking their lips in some sort of weird way. I'm like, I'm very pleased with myself right now. Did everyone see me walked out of my stall? It was really nice. Like, and Rex are clearly very self-satisfied a lot of the time. Like they they are women who know who they are.
I love
that. That is very good.
Well, speaking of women that know what they're worth, let's get into talking about Mareworthy.
So I'm on the board at Mareworthy. I'm the third board member, and my involvement with them as a board member is mostly an advisory capacity, and on lots of things ranging from, is this horse safely adoptable, to does this horse have good quality of life still? And then obviously the financial things that all horse businesses and especially all horse nonprofits face, right? How do we get enough donations coming in the door, right? How do we keep them coming in the door? How do we keep people repeat donating? So Kyle's very pleased that the Pasture Pals program has taken off so well. And I'd encourage anybody listening to go check it out because it's super cool. You get some like pen pal letters from the mares and you get a
that's fun
sticker each.
Oh, I love that.
It's super cute. It's super fun. You can donate $5. You can donate $25. You can cancel at any time. But it's a fun way to kind of get something out of your donation, but also know that like your money's going to a really great place. Kyle works very hard to be super transparent about all the financials and things. And I applaud him for that because that takes an enormous level of organization that I'm not entirely sure is my wheelhouse. But it's good that it's his, and it's good that I have different skills. And yeah, I mean, really, it was Babe who made that whole board position possible. I have Babe to thank for quite a lot of things. She really brought Kyle and I together in this sort of car accident kind of way. This little brown mare in a kill pen who used to be on the track. And then all of a sudden we became really good friends, and we figured out that we really respected one another, and like, oh my gosh, how had we not met each other prior to now? And we both really love mares. Mares are definitely my deal. And so it was just a really natural fit, I think.
So is their whole organization just rehoming mares that are off the track thoroughbreds?
Yes. So our goal is to help educate, protect and rehome off the track mares, right? We're entirely
Really cool.
Most specifically, we like to target brood mares because they're kind of an underserved population in the track world. And a lot of our mission is to sort of encourage people to responsibly rehome, because a lot of these brood mares are much older at the time that they're like no longer in service, quote unquote, right? And so then it's a little harder to rehome them, and it's a little harder sometimes to retrain them. Like sometimes that age is, and that patina is like a wonderful thing. And sometimes because they're like, what are you talking about? I've been a broodmare in a field for 14 years. Like nobody ever does anything with me. And now you want me to what? Like,
right. Right. No, my life was planned.
What? That wasn't my life plan. And you know, are a little offended by it. And, you know, honestly, I can't say I blame them, right? Like, you know, if I had been a kid on an allowance until, 27, and then all of a sudden, my parents were like, oh, no, thanks.
Right.
I mean, I'd be pretty devastated over that too. I have to have a job. What are you talking? No, like, and so, and then you just add a little maritude to that, or like a little chestnut color. And, all of a sudden it's, life is hard. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's really our goal to say, hey, there are really responsible, great owners out there. This is a really great way for people to try to transition their mares. We have a sanctuary, but we also do adoptions. And one of the projects we're working on is Mareworthy Match. So it's supposed to be a forum for people to be able to say like, hey, I have this older broodmare. She's retiring. She might be willing to or capable of doing X, Y, and Z, who might be interested in her. And for, people who may need a companion animal, or people who, may need a babysitter mare, or people who, like me, who maybe just like, they just want a Liberty horse or a trail horse, or a nice older lady that's seasoned and been there and done that, because, their days of doing 4-year-olds are over. It's sort of like a networking site, if you will, for mare owners and potential new mare owners. But it's super cool. It's technically off the ground. Go check it out, mareworthymatch.com. But it's
really cool.
Yeah, the next evolution in Mareworthy to help rehome the most mares possible.
That's awesome. We'll definitely include links to that in our show notes.
Woohoo!
Listeners that are interested. That sounds really cool. And where is the sanctuary located?
So it's in Kentucky. It's in
okay.
So it's renting space technically from horse husband stables, but there are several mares in sanctuary, and mares get put in sanctuary for all different kinds of reasons. Sometimes they're just not adoptable. Sometimes we have one mare that has a particularly invested former owner that just wanted her to have a really nice retirement, and they make a lovely donation to us every so often, and, try to look out for her comfort for the rest of her life, even if she's not.
I know our RRP rider that has a horse from them was telling us a little bit about the backstory of how that mare was connected to Mareworthy. And when she said the name of the breeding farm, I was like, this was one of the top breeding farms in the whole United States. And we're not talking about your backyard brood mares. We're talking about some quality thoroughbred stock.
Oh my God.
These horses have pedigrees that are out the wazoo, incredible.
They are incredible. And I think it's an incredible way for people to get a horse that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get any other way, because they don't have $50,000 sitting in their bank account to just write a check at a sale or to a really big breeder.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing to really highlight is that the breeding community has super stepped up. A majority of the time when mares are in trouble or in need of a home, and we've contacted the original breeders, they do step up in some way financially for these mares to try to help get them to us or get them directly to an adoptable home. And so I think that's another really great thing about the thoroughbred industry to highlight, is that I think sometimes there's a little bit of this narrative that oh, the track is this not so good place. And I think there are a lot of people in thoroughbred racing that really do care quite a lot. And certainly through my connection with Mareworthy, I've seen more of the care quite a lot than the doesn't care at all. And so I think that's been super special. It was an unexpected part of the journey with them. The whole thing was unexpected.
Yeah. It's something that we've been kind of coming back to over and over again. We're seeing an upward trend on the full life cycle of the thoroughbred, right? So where we keep our horses is also a thoroughbred breeding facility. And one of the things that's really cool is seeing all of the horses that come back around when they're done racing. And so truly our barn manager gets to see these horses come full circle. You know, she's foaling them out and then retraining them for a second career. And it's just such a cool process. And now we've gotten to the point, we've been there long enough where I think in the next year or two, maybe we'll see one that we saw as a baby coming back. And we're kind of excited about that, especially with this year's crop. We've got some really, really great thoroughbreds. And I'm like, okay, this one, I can't wait to see this one come back.
But I think that's really exciting, right? I mean, I think there was a lot of shade thrown at racing for a long time about like, I mean, they are disposable and they only race for these short careers and this animal has a whole nother life after that. But I think one of the great things about the Makeover and the Retired Racehorse Project and so many of these organizations like Mareworthy and After the Races is that it's starting to really shed light on the fact that they are really versatile, special animals, and they can have wild careers doing all kinds of after their time at the track. It just takes a little time, a little patience, and I think a little creative thinking sometimes.
I think the optics of the sport are shifting in the direction of supporting the foundation of where thoroughbreds come from in terms of like the breeders, trainers. You know, I think for a long time, a lot of the people at the track didn't have anywhere to turn at the end of a meet. The horses were done, or when they were retiring, it was like, well, now what?
Yeah, the owner doesn't want to pay.
Right.
Right.
We now what we have now are all of these incredible aftercare organizations. We have all of these different institutions in place. And with the growth of the RRP, the horses are finding a better ending to, or should I say a better restart for the rest of their life. And then the trainers and owners and breeders are also realizing that like they are as much a part of that aftercare as the people that get them for their second career. And I think that we're bridging that gap between the breeders, trainers, and the second career people.
Well, I think you're totally right. And I think more and more I hear from people who breed thoroughbreds like, oh, this one, when they hit the ground, even like this one would be super great at eventing. You know, and it doesn't mean that they don't necessarily race them. Sometimes they don't because they're like, oh, I think it would just be like a super awesome dressage horse, right?
Yeah.
But I think that is super cool, right? When you start hearing that, but you hear it from the beginning, not at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't usually, the dogs are not usually in this room when I'm recording, but no one's home. And so now I have one Australian Shepherd in my lap.
All I saw was a nose coming up from the bottom.
Oh,
he wants to be on the air.
He wants a little air time. Oh my God. Well, Kathy, I think before we get going too long on this episode, I feel like we could just talk to you forever. I feel like I say that with all the amazing guests that we have on the podcast, but it's just kind of true. We've been really, really lucky to meet just some incredible people throughout this process. Can you give us any contact info or social media info for yourself, Pressure Proof, and Mareworthy?
I can. Okay, so you can look up Mareworthy on Facebook and on Instagram. You just type in Mareworthy exactly as it sounds like and exactly as you'd spell it, one word. For myself on Instagram, I'm at pressure.proof. You can also look me up on Facebook. I'm on there too as Pressure Proof. You can look me up personally on Facebook. I'm Kathy Goodman with a K. My website is pressureproofcoaching.com, and that is all my contact information on it. So
awesome. And then if somebody wanted to go about setting up a Pressure Proof clinic near them, how would they go about doing that?
Go to my website. I mean, you could also personal message me on Facebook. Any way to get a hold of me is really valid, but the most official way to do it would be to go to my website, click the contact me button. My phone number's on there, my email's on there, and just contact me and say, hey, I'd really like to book a Pressure Proof clinic. How can we get it going? And I'm in X location and I'm happy to come to you.
Awesome.
All right. Anything else that we want to add?
And I was like, don't bring up the scuba diving. Don't bring up the scuba diving.
It's so funny. I almost brought that up way in the beginning because when we were talking about the Pressure Proof clinics and how something scares you and it kind of rattles you. Well, I got my scuba diving certification, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago. I had previously scuba dived like in a Club Med many, many, many years before that one time where the training was I don't know, who knows what it was. Anyway, I went through the whole PADI training, and I remember I knew that you have to take off your mask and your respirator while you're underwater. And I think we had to swim a certain distance without it. And I was like terrified of that. It just built up in my head. So I think it has other applications as well.
Oh, 100% does. Just remember, just keep swimming, just like Dory, right?
Your specific message when you were talking about your scuba diving was go fast, see very little, go slow, see a lot.
Yeah. I think that applies to horses though, right? Certainly that applies to Rex. She may go a little slower, but I think our career together will be long,
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it matters that she doesn't make it to dressage at the makeover. And maybe I pick a different discipline. Maybe I pick something that seems to not be quite as difficult for her just yet. Mm-hmm. But that's that whole go slow, be creative, put them first, horse before the course and everything. If you just kind of try to do the right thing for you and for them, I think the rest always falls into place.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kathy, so much for being on the podcast.
If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can find OTTB on Tap on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Please give us a like and a follow. We also love hearing from listeners. Feel free to reach out to us with potential interview candidates and topic suggestions at OTTBontap.com. Sign up for our newsletter to be the first to find out about upcoming episodes, bonus content, and much more. Thanks.
Bye.